All right. So we are on the air. This is the Out in Greek webinar hosted by the National APIA Panhellenic Association, Part 2. It's a follow-up webinar to our first webinar back in February of this year as one of NAPA's LGBTQ initiatives for our members and our supporters. So we hope that you are going to join us and are going to be engaged with us, and we encourage all of you to ask us questions. We are going to wait a few minutes so that way it gives people time to join us.
Toubee?
Yes.
Did you get her text just now? Or
Oh, okay. I will. For those of you who are joining us now, we will be beginning in a few minutes. We're waiting for more viewers as well as another guest to join us, possibly. So please sit tight.
I hate awkward silences. Do we want to just talk about something?
Yeah, so what's everyone dressing up for Halloween?
So the staff in my office actually had a Halloween. We have a costume contest throughout Duke, actually. So I actually designed the costumes for our entire staff. But we were actually. Has anyone ever played Guess Who, the board game, as a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we dressed up as the blue side, obviously, because we're Duke. I would just I could show you a photo. I actually have to submit it to Duke soon for the costume contest, but I'm not sure if I'll be that for Halloween. I haven't thought that far yet. It's only Wednesday.
Okay. All right. So It is 8:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we are going to begin in the interest of time and for all of those who are watching and who may have really important questions for all of us. So I will begin. My name is Toubee Yang. I am a member of Lambda Phi Epsilon International Fraternity Incorporated. I am originally from Pontiac, Michigan. I am a Midwesterner, but I currently live in the Northeast, the New England area, in Providence, Rhode Island. That's because I currently serve as the Assistant Director for Fraternity and Sorority Life. So yes, I am an FSA. And some of my identities that I identify with, obviously I'm Asian, I identify as gay, I use he, him, his pronouns, and my ethnicity is Hmong. And I will pass it on over to the other panelists to introduce themselves. Popcorn Vigor.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Vigor. I'm a member of Pilots Psi Fraternity. Shoot, I printed the 5 things. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am from Ohio, originally, Columbus, Ohio, and I currently live in Durham, North Carolina, and work as the academic coordinator in the Pratt School of Engineering at Duke as an academic coordinator advising master's engineering students. I identify as gay, and I will popcorn it to Rob.
Oh, okay, my turn. All right, hey, my name is Robert Mady. I'm from Pi Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I am from Almer, North Carolina, but I'm in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. I didn't really go too far. I am a digital marketing consultant for a company here in Charlotte, and I am gay. I also am Laotian, and I go with pronouns he, him, his. I guess Tricia?
Hi, my name is Tricia Prettypaul. I'm a part of the Sigma Sigma Rho Sorority Incorporated. It's a South Asian Greek sorority, and I currently live in New York City, right in the smack in the middle of Manhattan, in 30, like right across from Macy's. I'm sure everybody probably knows where that is. I am an attorney, and I've been practicing for several years now, about 6 years or so. I identify as she and her. I am also a lesbian, and I think that's about it. Thank you. Oh, wait, also I'm Guyanese.
Yeah, there you go. Popcorn to our last panelist, Nguyen.
Hi, sorry, technical difficulties. My name is Nguyen. I am from Alpha Phi Gamma Sorority Incorporated. My hometown is technically Plano, Texas, and I am currently back in Texas, in Denton, Texas. So I work in Student Affairs as the Assistant Director for the Center for Student Development at Texas Women's University. And my identities, I identify as an Asian American and bisexual woman. And my pronouns, she, her, hers.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set some ground rules so that way, moving forward, we can, abide by them, but also, be respectful of each other. And so some of the ground rules that we will be setting is, obviously, have an open mind to learn and also to gain new perspectives because we are chartering new territory for many people, but also we will be sharing a lot of our own stories and a lot of our experiences that are in the past, but are also present situations for ourselves. In addition, some other ground rules are that we encourage you to ask questions. So there should be a chat box, a Q&A box that should be open. So you are more than happy to send in your submissions. I see that NC State University is with us, and they have already sent in some comments. So hi, NC State University. Some other ground rules I would say is to definitely use I statements and not we. So obviously we are talking about us individually in our fraternities and sororities in our organizations, but we are not speaking on behalf of our organizations. Many of us do serve on our international, national boards, but in no way are we speaking and on behalf of them saying, my fraternity does this, my fraternity does that. And we also come from individual chapters that may not be, that may not practice the same, things as other chapters of our national organizations. Any other ground rules from the other panelists? Do we have any ground rules from our viewers that would like to set in some ground rules? Maybe. All right. Well, we'll get right into it, and if you do have any, I will mention them. So the first question that we want to address is, it's a little bit of a difficult one. In our last webinar, we talked a lot about who we were. We talked a lot about us coming out and being LGBTQ in our organizations. But now we want to dive in deeper and identify, more of like what it is that we went through and also what has affected us and whatnot. So we are going to dive right in now with a really deep question. So to our panelists, what are some challenges you faced as an LGBTQ person during your time as an active, or that you are still facing today with your organization? So I'll read the question again. What are some challenges you faced as an LGBTQ person during your active years, or that you're still facing today with your organization?
I guess I'll answer the first question. I think that I should note that when I was active, I was not out, so there were really the only challenges I had at that time were that I was in the closet, and it was very difficult for me because these were, of course, some of the closest people in my life, and I wasn't able to tell them everything about who I was, and it was very, very difficult. So being in the closet as an active sorority sister who's very involved, by the way, I was very involved as a sister. It's because we had so many events and it was very cool what we were doing. So you always wanted to be in it, but at the same time, you can't avoid those questions about your personal life. So that was very difficult. That was very challenging. But as a host, as an alumni, I was usually active with our active sisters. I mean, in terms of like talking to them and hanging out with them. And eventually, people would find out that I am a lesbian. And at that point, you get either some people who are very supportive or very confused. So it was the constant coming out that was the biggest challenge for me. I was very lucky, though, because a lot of my sisters, most of them, if not all, have been very, very supportive. But a lot of the older ones, the ones I respected, and I really had a lot to deal with in terms of like what my mentorship, that they had mentored me as a young person. It was very difficult for me to come out to them, and I had to do that over and over again because there were so many and they were dispersed after they graduated. But that would probably be the biggest challenge I faced. So nothing terrible, but it was definitely ongoing.
Yeah, I know that that's tough. Having to be in the closet with the people that you love the most and that you should be able to be yourself around, and that they pretty much chose you and crossed you because of who you are, and so having to hide that from someone is definitely tough. That's definitely a challenge. Yes.
I can definitely. Oh, sorry. I'll go ahead. I can definitely echo what Tricia was saying about her experiences being in the closet. I think when I first started pledging, I came to a crossroads in terms of if I wanted to disclose my sexuality before I started to be educated. I think that was a conscious decision I was really thinking about making, and I chose not to disclose my sexuality because I wasn't comfortable with myself at that point either. And it was definitely hard. I think as I became a brother, was initiated, it was really tough being the only one in my chapter that I knew of that was gay, right? And finding other bros in other chapters was hard at the time because I didn't know other chapters. The closest chapter we had was, I think, Minnesota, so it was really tough. So I think being the only one, being the only like the other, was really tough. And I think once I came out to my pledge brothers first during the process, and I think that really helped me to get that support, that very initial, very close support, because these are the brothers that I have been with through this whole time that I've been in the fraternity so far. So that was something that was a challenge and a positive at the same time. And I think the biggest challenge I did really face was kind of disrupting the masculinity that happened in my chapter. I think being gay and being out are two different things, I think, or not different things, but they're two different processes, right? Two stages. And I think disrupting that and redefining what I thought masculinity was really tough, especially as it kind of clashed with my chapter and them being straight.
Rob or Mai, you both want to share?
Sure, I'll go next. So one thing that the challenges that I faced was language and things like that. I definitely, there were people in different chapters and things like that who would use the word gay so loosely and use it synonymously with words for stupid and other things. So it's just as an active, it was really always constantly reminding them, how hurtful it is. And everybody is getting better, but with every new class, it's kind of like I have to constantly remind them and things like that.
My experience was fairly positive, actually. So, being active, I think I was like, we were already done with our process. The subject never came up. So it was never something I felt the need to disclose, I suppose. And that might be like a strange thing that I do. I don't know. But when it did come up, as far as like me after crossing with my line, me finding a partner, that's when I ended up coming out to them. And I honestly just came out to my closest line sister. I'm close to all of them, but my closest line sister. And it was just like okay, cool. Does anyone else know type of thing? And then I just ended up telling everyone. So for me, it wasn't too big. There weren't as many challenges, so to say. I would say the biggest challenge was everybody everybody can talk about their relationships, but when it comes around to like talking about my relationships, especially being bisexual, sometimes it might be with a man, totally normal then for them, versus if I have a relationship with another woman, then it's kind of like there are certain topics that people want to stray away from. And that was the biggest challenge because I didn't understand why, if we could talk about it with everybody else with their relationships.
That's valid. Yeah. So obviously, so we've identified that language and also like communication, like what to say, is a very big piece of the challenge. Is educating them on what to say, what not to say, are two very very important pieces that are some challenges that we face every day. I think for me, some challenges that I faced as an active, I think it's just like my bros, like they knew it wasn't anything that I hid. Like I came out when I was when I was a teenager. So like I always talked about it. I always shared it. It was nothing that I hid, and so it was a very big part of who I was and who I am still today. So if they asked about it, I think as I grew older, it was like, oh well, it's not a big deal anymore for me at least, so I don't have to go around and boast it and things like that. So for them, it came up in casual conversation every now and then. For them, they would just be like, so how's it like, being gay and in a fraternity, you know, so they'll kind of like hesitate, you know, a little bit in asking just because they've never had that conversation with me before. So that was kind of a challenge, was kind of them waiting for me to bring it up first, acknowledging it first before they assume or think it's okay. And I think that's also a challenge, is, you know, maybe many of our brothers and our sisters have never had an openly LGBTQ person before in their life, so they don't know how to communicate with another, you know, with us. But also at the same time, like, we're bros, we're sisters, you know, like we should be able to communicate with each other. But I think it's that communication piece of like, how do we say it? How do I address it? Because for my, right, like, I don't know, are you with the girl? Are you with the guy? You know, like, do I call them your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner, your significant other, your spouse, right? There's so many different things, and it could go wrong. So I think it's really important. You know, this communication piece is really key, but it's also been a challenge for many of us. The second question, how were you able to navigate Greek life and its stigmas and its heteronormativity?
I guess I'll go first. I think it's a little bit easier for me. I mean, I hate to be pejorative about that, but it is probably a little bit easier for me because I am more feminine. When I was in college and I was active, though, I think that it was not so much of a requirement for us to be these overly feminine women who hung out with the Greek guys and did that stuff. We never really had that kind of pressure, for at least in the Northeast. So I would say that I navigated it well because I was never really faced with that challenge. That being said, we do have a lot of sisters from other parts of the country where I think it can become more of a challenge because their lifestyle there is very different. They're not expected to, I mean, they're expected to sort of hang out with the Greeks, with the brothers, and, you know, in their school or on the campus, and go to mixers all the time and do those things, where I was never expected to do that. So I think I had a little bit of an easier time, because even if I did go to the parties and, you know, I was in these situations where I had to interact and be sort of, I guess, a part of that Greek life, that situation that we could all relate to. It was really not that much pressure. I think most people were very supportive of me just saying, yeah, I didn't really want to date anybody. So, or, you know, obviously not date all alone. I mean, working with other people or doing things like that. They weren't really pressuring me.
So I was only active for a year because I was initiated as a junior, and so my senior year was kind of actually the first time it was, I think, in that year that I really came out in general. And so I remember a specific example in the story of our banquet at the end of the year, and I had a date, and it was the first time anyone's ever brought a date, like a plus one, that's a same gender and sex to the banquet. And it was a little awkward. My date felt very uncomfortable, being the only other male that wasn't in the fraternity. And I think as the actives and just the alumni that were in my fraternity, the chapter, made them feel kind of excluded in terms of the jokes and all the things that they said. So it was definitely tough to kind of navigate that with him. I wasn't sure how to make him feel more comfortable at the time. I think that also there are a lot of challenges with the older alum in my chapter. They definitely turned their heads and like not seeing me have a girl date or someone that identified as female. So I think that was a challenge. I think going up the Midwest too was a challenge with that. But I think that the way I combated that was really finding allies, and the people that I did really supported me in the chapter. So whether it be my pledge brothers, my big bro, the pledge educator, they were all very supportive. Not that everyone wasn't, but I felt like I'm more comfortable around them because I had one-on-one conversations with them about my sexuality and my journey and what challenges I really faced in the chapter.
Rob or Mai?
Sure, I'll go next. For me, I chartered them at my university, so I got to know my group pretty much 2 years beforehand. And at my chapter, my local chapter, at that time, technically, I was just me, and they treated me just like me. The fact that I was gay, it didn't matter. So it's like there would always be conversation of like who are you bringing to installs and things like that, and they'd all always ask like, are you going to bring some guy, we're going to meet him, we're going to grill him and things like that. So I mean, it wasn't really anything to me, but that's my local chapter. And even in other states and other schools, like we would have functions with like NC State, and then like there was like Mike Styles and things like that. Like it wouldn't be anything, but like everyone else, like that's in my general area. Going in other areas, some might be still a little uncomfortable, but I think they're coming around.
Um, I guess for me, it wasn't, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I think for me, I was always dating the same person throughout from like shortly after crossing until I graduated. And I mean, I went through process as a freshman. So
Wait,
I was
so the same person or the same type of person?
the same person.
Oh,
I dated the same person for 2 years, but I was in school for about three and a half. And I pledged my freshman year, so second semester freshman year. So there wasn't. I was always with the same person. I came out to my line when I started dating that person. So I brought her to everything sorority related on our end within our colony or chapter now. Um, but I think in general with other organizations within Greek life, I found myself being a lot more cognizant of the language I would use when describing the person I'm dating. So I still do that today. I'm really good at using like neutral words so that people can't really tell, because it's like I have to sense or read that person to figure out would they be okay or would they not be okay with whatever I start talking about. Typically, if someone asks me like, who's your boyfriend type of thing, I would correct them if that's not the person, the type of person I'm dating. um, but other than that, yeah, I think it wasn't too difficult to navigate for me as much because I had that constant same person I was dating the entire time.
so someone's dog wants to participate on the webinar as well. I think it's Mize. So yeah, I think for me, in terms of navigating, I think it was really just really being open and honest and sharing with everyone. I think like for me, it was a little bit tough at the beginning because I wasn't sure about how to go, how to approach. Being open and honest with my sexual orientation and with them because I wasn't sure of their comfortability. Kind of like their lives, like and Tricia had mentioned that you meet bros and sisters from different areas, different regions, and they live different lifestyles. They have different perspectives and things like that. So it was a little bit tough, but I think it's just really just trusting in them and having the confidence that they're going to accept you and be there for you no matter what. So I think it was just slowly like dropping like little sharing stories here and there, dropping little stories here and there. So like, oh, today I went to the Pride Alliance meeting, or the other day I went on a date with this guy. I said guy. So kind of drop in those little hints here and there, and that was kind of like how I navigated it. But also like just not assuming, because I think that for many of us who identify as LGBTQ, to play it on the safe side, we just assume that they may not be okay with it, and so like that's why we just don't share it, or we don't disclose our sexual orientation right off the bat. But I can remember that there was this experience with some of my bros on international board. So some of the bros on international board, if you're watching, you may remember this, but I just assumed that like they didn't want to hear about my dating or my love life, so I just never said anything. But when we were together for a conference or a meeting, I was like, I don't know if like you guys want to hear about this. And they're like, no, you can. Like it doesn't matter. Like you can talk to us about these things. And so, like that was really inviting to hear. Just because like I just assumed they didn't want to hear about it, but they're like, no, like it's perfectly fine. Like you can talk to us. You should feel comfortable talking to us about your love and your romance life. So there is an audience question before we move on to some of our questions. And I think this is actually a really good question because the question is, were there others that also identified as LGBTQ within your own chapter? Were you closer to these individuals than the rest? So I would also expand that just to, were there other LGBTQ members in your chapter or in your organization in general? So anyone want to start off with that one?
Sure, I can start. So I originally actually went to school as a freshman in University of Colorado Boulder, and I was a freshman at the time, was not out, and I think there was an interest group for my fraternity at the time, and that's kind of actually the inception of how I joined the fraternity, is that the students there really wanted me to join, even when I transferred back to Ohio. So our charter class actually had three now openly gay brothers, which is a lot for I think a chapter in general. And to this day, I still keep in touch with them. And in terms of my own chapter, we don't have one that I know of. But I think that I definitely relate and talk to these brothers from Colorado that are all over, and in general too. There are brothers in a fraternity that I know of that are out. And I guess back to the Colorado is it's really great that they were so open with their sexuality, and I think that the chapter there was very, very supportive. They would joke, and it wasn't like to make fun, but it was more just to share and just make fun of each other in a way that wasn't offensive. So I think that I really appreciated that, and I felt like I was almost even part of the chapter because they were always like, "Oh, you would have been like our charter." Um, but yeah, I think you definitely appreciate it. And it was really helpful to have them. They were older than me, so they were able to kind of guide me in going through this process. When I was pledging, I was constantly texting this brother because I was like, "Yo, this just happened. They just said the word, fag. What do I do?" Right? Like, it was really good to have someone like that to talk to because I've never been through it, obviously, and so I think having someone that has gone through it was very helpful.
Okay, I'll go next. So in my class, when I was pledging, I was the only one that was out, but there were um some individuals that you know are queer and things like that, but of course they were not. So it was kind of like, yeah, I did have some, but I kind of didn't. So I wasn't really close because of the fact that we were all LGBTQ. So to me, it wasn't really a factor. But now, I'm starting to find out there are, plenty more. There's actually a Facebook group that Vigor and Toubee are in, and there's kind of like this um, count of how many people are in there in our organizations. I think LFIE is winning, but I mean, I'm getting to know more bros who are LGBTQ, and I think that's awesome.
I'll go next. There's no one within my line or my chapter that I'm aware of about who identify as LGBTQ, but there are people within the organization that I'm aware of. And I joke around with a lot of them all the time that I feel like it's this like this secret network of people because we all know about each other and we all talk to each other about like our relationships, about things that we do, you know, whatever it might be, because I think there's that much, a little bit more in common. Um, but yeah, that's the only thing I can really say. I just joke around because somehow we just all know about each other and connect with each other. If we don't know each other yet, somebody will introduce us.
I actually don't know too many people in my organization that identify as LGBTQIA. Yeah. I would say I only know like maybe a few. I don't even know if it's few. I think it's probably less than that. But we're a really small organization, and I do know one person who I am close to. Like that was way after I came out. So I mean, way like in the past couple of years. Before that, honestly, like the closest people in my organization that I had, the people who I rely on the most, and we're all straight people. You know, they're all they were just the girls that I pledged with, really. And I was closer to them than anybody else, no matter what, you know, who else was in the organization. Just because we went through a lot. So, I unfortunately I don't know too many South Asian women who, in general, from all three organizations that identify as as a lesbian or bisexual or anything else, really. Quick answer.
So just to clarify, yeah, so there is a Facebook group that we have right now. It came out of the Asian American Greek Facebook page, and so it is pretty private and discreet as of now because for the confidentiality reasons and also for the privacy and just respect out of everyone's outness and whether wherever they are in their coming out journey. So for right now, we are limiting the membership only to those who do identify as LGBTQIA, and so we do have a pretty good membership right now. And correction, PD Psi is leading in membership in the organization, but that's just in the Facebook group. Who knows internationally how many of us are there really, and also how many of us are there out there who are living out, but then those who may still be in the closet and may not have discovered that part of themselves just yet. So yeah, so if you are interested in the Facebook group, please feel free to email me as well as add me on Facebook, and we can add you to the Facebook group. But please know that it is limited only to those who identify as LGBTQIA for those exact reasons. Let's see. So I'm gonna jump a little bit here. Natalie from NC State, I do see your question. That is actually a question that we are going to answer towards the end. But the next question that we are going to address is, how do you think being Asian Pacific Islander, Desi American plays a role in the intersectionality of all of our identities, being Greek, being LGBTQ, your race, ethnicity, APIDA. How does that throw in? How does that fit in, or not fit into all of your identities mixed in together? Because yes, we're Greek and yes, we're gay, but then in an Asian interest fraternity, in an Asian interest sorority, in a South Asian interest sorority, how does that get, how does that work out when there are cultural influences and when a lot of our membership come from those ethnicities and races where there may be a lot of traditional patriarchal bring honor to your family kind of values?
I guess I'll start because I was starting the other questions. So I will say that I think this is a very niche community, and although we're very different separately, we do have a big commonality. And I think when I went to NAPIA, I believe someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone summed it up perfectly as to saying that, we're the type of group that doesn't like to ask for help a lot. We like to work things out and do things on our own, but we don't really want the community to know too much about things, or we like to work things out on our own. And I do believe that being in a South Asian sorority, where there's so many different religions, so many different types of people who come from so many different areas of South Asia, but also the diaspora, which I'm from. I'm not from Asia, the Asian continent. I'm from South America, but I'm descendant of South Asians. So for me, it's even more weird because I have this very, very strange community that is so small but is so diverse, and I have that on my shoulders, is what I'm saying. And when you're in there, you do tend to feel a lot of pressure. You tend to feel that you have to be everything for these people. But you'd be surprised when you are in this very diverse community. They do respect you enough to say that as long as you are doing things to make yourself respectful, you're making sure that you are respecting your own self and respecting your family, eventually people understand that the generations. I do feel that being in America especially affords me the opportunity to do that quicker than I would if I was in Guyana or in India. But it still gives me that opportunity, and I'm taking full advantage of it. So that's the best I can answer that question.
All right, I'll go next. All right. So being Asian is actually, I came out when I was 16. And being Asian and Laotian and Buddhist played a huge role in my developmental state coming out. We're quite a conservative nature, and so that led to personal struggles when I came out. I went through so much depression and so much mental instabilities because I was coming to terms with who I am. My parents weren't very supportive, and they wanted the conservative, traditional way of, I'll end up marrying a woman and having a life and continuing their legacy that way. So I think the fact that I'm Asian played a huge role in, um, you know, coming out and developing states, and now it kind of, I watch what I say when I'm around, older people and things like that, because I don't want to. If there's a couple of things, I want to be proud of who I am, but I also don't want to disgrace my parents, and so being Asian, being Buddhist especially, I it just it just is what it is. And we talk a lot about mental health is a big part of it's a big NAPA initiative, and that was definitely for me because I didn't have that outcome. I didn't have that support line when I was 16, and I definitely contemplated things that I shouldn't have, but it was part of my developing as coming out.
I think you both bring up a really good point, like the traditions thing, right? I think that's something that we have to constantly unlearn, right? I think that as we're in Asian America, in America in general, right, it's the East versus West mentality. I think that we're constantly learning and taking pieces of culture from our own family, from American culture. We're kind of piecing it together and trying to make sense of all of that. And I think that's something that's we're trying to do constantly, right, every day. Me growing up speaking Cantonese and learning English in the school, I think that was really tough. There's a constant push and pull and redefining who I was as Asian American, as queer, being Greek. I think it's I want to say a beautifully messy thing. It's something that you constantly have to think about, but I think that it's something that we're kind of redefining, right? Like, what we're redefining ourselves. What does it mean to be queer? What does it mean to be Asian American? What does it mean to be out Greek, right? I think that we're constantly doing that.
So I would say for me, it didn't really play a big role until I got to really college, because I came out at a very early age too. I came out when I was 13. So I had a lot of time before college to really kind of figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, what I was comfortable with. And I think going into college, already being out for 5 years at least, made me a little bit more confident too. But I was always a semi-private person when it came to like my dating life, as in like I just never really talked about it unless I was really close to you. So it didn't really play a role until college, because I think that's when, as I was with that person, the same person through college for over 2 years, it came to a point where maybe I should come out to my parents, because all of my friends, all of my cousins, my brother knew, but my parents and my aunts and uncles didn't really know. So like the older generation. And that's, I think my parents were the biggest struggle, because they had so many expectations. They expected me to have a family. They expected very like traditional things out of a Vietnamese woman. So I know when I finally came out to my parents, it was like my senior year of college, and it totally crushed at least my mom for a while. And I think that was, it's been a really big struggle. It was a big struggle for her for like the first year or so, to kind of re-navigate what it means to be successful in life, and how this one identity isn't causing as big as of a barrier as she thinks, to having children or to getting married or to, you know, being happy. So I think that was probably one of the biggest barriers as far as my API identity. But besides that, just growing up, I think just being an Asian American woman plays a lot of different stereotypes in people's minds. So I think that in itself was a struggle. There's a lot of bullying, but I have a good sense of humor, so it was more like a roll off my back type of thing, or I will probably correct you, but it's not completely going to offend me that you said something completely offensive in general.
So, in regards to this question of how my API identity plays a role in the intersectionality, you know, I get asked this question quite often, and I think it's also because I'm a Greek life advisor, so I'm pretty aware of, you know, the different types of Greek organizations that exist out there. And I think I mentioned this on the other webinar too, but I constantly get asked, so why'd you join an Asian fraternity and not the gay fraternity? Why do I have to choose both, between both? I mean, obviously, I chose Lambdas, go Lambdas, but, you know, the fact that they have to ask me that question, you know, really baffles me in the sense that, like, why do I have to choose between both identities? And I think that that's something that we get faced with a lot, is that our parents or our culture or our community forces us to have to make a decision. Like, you can only be gay, or you can only be your APIDA identity, and, you know, we can be both. And obviously, like, we are living proof that we can be both, and we're navigating it, we're living it, we're, you know, we are trying to be as, you know, as living proof and success stories as possible every single day, you know. So that leads us to Natalie, your question from NC State. How can APIDA chapters advocate for more inclusive spaces for either, you know, APIA students or LGBTQ students? How can our chapters, our NAPA organizations, or Greek organizations in general, how can we work better to create more inclusive spaces, so that way, we're not viewed as those heteronormative chapters, or that, we're only made for heterosexual women or heterosexual men, or cis men, cis women, right? How can we create those spaces um, where excuse me, where people will no longer say, oh, I can't join a fraternity because I'm gay. You know, Obviously that's not true, because we're all here today, Greek. So how can we create those spaces? I think that that is what Natalie is asking.
I can start. I think that it begins with the person or the individuals in the chapter. I think that the most basic thing you could do is go to ally training. I think that if your campus has a resource center, an LGBTQ resource center, it would behoove you to go there and talk to the staff there and get some training in terms of the terms, the basic 101 things of being LGBTQ and queer, right? And how to be a good ally. I think on top of that, there are many things that you can do as a chapter. It could mean hosting a workshop. I think the first time I actually spoke on being gay in Greek was at Ohio State. As an alumni, actually, they couldn't find another out brother in my council, the Multicultural Council, actually, in all of the campus. And so I shout out to Delta Xi Phi for hosting this panel. We had 4 panelists, and it was great, because I think that it was a packed room of all different types of councils, people, students, non-Greeks, if non-affiliates, affiliated, whatever, right? And I think that was a great tool for those personal stories to come out like we are doing here. I think that collaborating with other chapters, actually after that panel, a Sigma Phi Beta, a LGBTQ fraternity came to campus. And that's amazing. I'm not sure if that was a catalyst for why that chapter was founded at Ohio State, but I think it may have been definitely a help.
I would say maybe along with the ally training or the safe zone training or whatever's offered at your school, definitely think about and be more reflective and conscious about the language that's used. I think it's very common within Greek organizations and organizations in general to use words that are very heteronormative. I think it's more prevalent within Greek life because you say you're in a sorority, and within sorority are all women, and with women you expect them to have boyfriends, things like that. So I would just be a little more aware of the language that's used, because that in itself can have a huge impact for prospective members or for other people out there who interact with your organization. Something else that I think would be very helpful too is if you have like a queer straight alliance on campus, and kind of partnering up with those other types of organizations to show one, support that you're an ally, but then also for members who might be a little more closeted, shows that you as an organization as a whole could support them too. So those would be my suggestions on top of what Vigor's already said.
Tricia or Rob?
I think that I think you probably covered all you can do really on campus, but what you can also do as an organization is like amongst your friends, like when you become really good friends with them and with your sisters, and you say you want to do things together. I mean, some of the things that my sisters did was that they would go to gay events. I mean, and I'd be shocked. You have to see them at these, whether it's like the Pride Parade or some other, like a National Coming Out Day. They would go to these events as sisters, just to support like another friend of theirs, not necessarily someone Greek. And as if you're in the closet, I think that really does help. So maybe you can encourage sisters in your organization or brothers, of course, in your organization to take part in these external events, just to support even their friends or people that they know who are out. or who are struggling with coming out. So you can go to anything that your campus has. I mean, it's these kind of activities, just on a smaller scale, to take part in it. Take some pictures, show that you're supportive. I think that would really help someone who is struggling and looking to see if they have anyone that they can look to support them.
Okay, so I mean, I guess everybody pretty like laid down everything you need to do, but it's basically just creating that safe space, for everyone, either be straight, gay, or whatever, just creating that safe space for everyone, and you know, um, language for me is always a big one, and just I really like getting to know people, no matter if they're LGBTQ, looking beyond that and just getting to know them. And eventually, word will get out and, education will just be there. So just really just creating a safe space.
I think it also comes like, so for the chapters and for the undergrads who are watching right now, I think undergrads, but also our international board members who are watching. I think it is really important when it comes to recruitment and our marketing materials and how our chapters are recruiting new members, because I can't tell you, like, working with chapters right now, I can easily identify how heteronormative, like, a lot of these rush activities are. Come play football with us, with the guys, or Manny's and Petties with XYZ sorority, or a fraternity and a sorority social. So like it's like opposite sex. It's like a lot of these things are very heteronormative, and so like when we as LGBTQ folk, when we see those things, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's not my place because it's only for straight people, for heterosexuals, So it's really off-putting to us, and so like it doesn't show us that you guys are inclusive, that y'all are inclusive. So that can really be off-putting, because I can remember, as a freshman in college, I went to like a Rush event and they were throwing around a football, and I was like, oh, peace out. I can't throw one. So, I mean, obviously, like, if I was, that athletic, I would join, but I think it was just like, okay, those are the kind of men that they're looking for and they want in their fraternity. And so also in your photos and your marketing, right? I think, I was, speaking with a colleague the other day who was updating, like a chapter website, and he was asking me, like, does it look okay? And there was a photo that I kind of questioned, because it was a photo of the chapter and its members at their initiation banquet or the installation banquet, and they were with women. All of them had female dates, and so I was like, I'm a little bit, like, hesitant with this photo, because like it may portray the idea that that it's only for heterosexual men. And so obviously I know that that's not like the point of the photo. The photo was to highlight that was, their initiation banquet, yes. But other people who don't know that may be really off-put by that. So I think that that's really important when it comes to your recruitment and your rush and your marketing materials. That, are you being inclusive? Are you showing them that you want LGBTQ folks to join your organization? We just got like 3 questions within like the last few minutes. So I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Kenny Jones from UPenn, who is watching right now. Hey, Kenny. He asked a really, really good question. So his question is, what or who are the allies or resources we as campus-based professionals, so Greek life advisors, could find in the field to continue this conversation with our groups on campus? So I think it's a tough question, but I think it's a really good one. Go ahead, Vigor.
So I think that as a grad student at USC, this is the University of Southern California, LA, I wasn't working in the fraternity life office, but I did know the staff there, and I think that it would have been really beneficial for them to have I actually did work at the Asian Cultural Center, and I think that they knew each other, but the staff at the Cultural Center weren't affiliated, but they were advising students that were in Asian interest fraternities or sororities and organizations. And so they didn't really know the Greek experience, but they knew the Asian American identity experience, obviously, Asian community. And vice versa, the fraternities were like staff members they knew the fraternal experience, but they didn't understand and have the cultural competence to really help this community. And so I think that there should have been more collaboration that was done with the staff, whether it be teaching each other about each other's communities. I think that's really where it's at. I think staff really need to tap into their own colleagues on campus if they have a resource center, if they have a culture center. I think that a lot of campuses don't. But if you do, I think that'd be very, very beneficial. And I think for now, me being at Duke, I'm hoping to serve as a resource to any Asian American students or Greeks or affiliated members as an alumni. I think that you should find those pockets of people that could potentially serve as an advisor or help kind of give that knowledge.
I also just as an idea would be, I would encourage like looking to external groups too. I mean, there are a lot of LGBTQIA groups that exist, and you can certainly find information from them, including PFLAG and HRC and GLAD. They have a lot of resources. I mean, I even look to them sometimes when I'm doing some events in my company, because I can't find material that I think is appropriate. And they have a lot of appropriate material. They have things that I can at least look to, or people that I can look to and speak to in their organization that can help. So don't be afraid. I don't think you should be afraid to seek that kind of outside help, I guess, from these established organizations.
I don't want to shamelessly self-promote ourselves, but I think Dr. Jones, I think if you bring up a really good point in that I think that this is the very first time this is happening in our organizations, and so it's really important to recognize that we may be the very first pioneers of this movement because those before us may still be in the closet or are just now starting to come out. And so we right here may be the ones who are kind of like leading this charge of those who are out and proud in our organizations and who are perhaps educated enough and intelligent enough to articulate how our experiences into best practices, and also how to increase the inclusivity in our communities. And so I know many of us, I know Rob doesn't come from a higher ed background, Tricia doesn't come from a higher ed background. She's in law. Rob is in IT. But Vigor, Mai, and I, I think the three of us, I like to think the three of us as like the power the power gay three in higher ed, when in Napa organizations. So not saying that we are the best in the field, but I think that we are definitely coming of age and up and coming scholars and resources in this field as young as we are, and that's typically what you see with our Napa organizations, that we have a lot of young adults, but also young adults who've had to grow up really fast to be able to run our organizations as successful as possible. Let's see. Were you ever seen as a bad representative of what your organization stood for? Did your status bar you from attaining a leadership position in the Greek world, and how did you overcome?
I think I'll just briefly talk about that. I was national vice president when I was active, when I just became an alumni, and that's also typical of what you would find in the NAPA organizations, that you have nationals who are super young, but I was in the closet then. And I came out, and now I'm on the board, and I've been on the board for a few years, and everybody knows I'm a lesbian, and they actually think it's really cool. So it's never barred me from being anything. I mean, this is like the highest level I possibly could attain, I think, in my organization, is to be on the board and to be honestly a lifetime member of the board. So it's never. I think the cliche there is that you can do as much as you want to achieve, and if you want to achieve things in the organization, you always find a way, especially in the NAPA organizations.
I definitely piggyback off Tricia. It's funny because during our convention this past summer, I was just walking around and my partner couldn't join me at the convention, but a lot of brothers didn't know I was queer. And so when they found out, they were like, "Oh, he's gay. I did not know that." And it wasn't like, "Oh, like he's gay," but it was more of, "Wow, like that's really cool." And so I think that it definitely hasn't barred me being elected as the vice chair of NAPA incoming. I think that it's definitely NAPA as a space, as a community, is very, very supportive of the queer community in general and people of all identities. My fraternity, specifically as well, has been very, very supportive of me. Our national president is one of my, closest friends, counsel, advisor, peers, therapist. He's always kind of there for me, and I've never had a problem.
I'll go next. I'll say it never barred me either from leadership positions, especially as an active one, because there weren't enough people not to hold a position. There's only 6 of us after we crossed, and there's like 13 positions, so you got to do something, and you got to step up to the plate. And I will say, like Tricia, very young, joined my national board. I think I was in my last semester, my senior year, when I was elected onto our national board in 2010. So by that point, I was really, really out and about. And I did not, I mean, I always kind of grew up with an attitude of like, I don't really care what you think, but I think, pushed it out even more as a national board member of like, I really don't care nationally if you want to judge me, but you're in my organization, so deal type of thing. So I will say, I think that helped. There was myself, and one other board member as well, who's very out and proud. And I think for us, I feel like, and I don't want to take for both of us all the credit, but I feel like because we were out and on national board, we noticed that more and more people, more and more sisters were coming out, or identifying, or feeling a little more comfortable to disclose that information. So I will say, I think because of us, it benefited our organization, because before then, it was just a very unspoken about thing. So I will say, yeah, it didn't bar me from any leadership positions, but I think being out and proud was definitely benefited the organization as a whole.
Yeah, so for me, again, I had no problems, honestly, when I joined, it is what it is. And, I'm a very hard-headed, like, I do my work, I push forward. My bros call me like a freight train kind of thing. Like, I was always a leader, and, it never barred me from moving up. If anything, being the fact open conversations and contributions to where, one of the older guys, someone I look to, oh, hi Gordon, we've had conversations, and he would tell me about things, and yeah, so I had no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, so that's a great question that you asked, because I think many of us, we have this conscious awareness of like of what we are, who we are, and we're always about equality and promoting LGBTQ awareness, but then we also get stigmatized as like, oh, here you go, here they go again talking about gay stuff, right? And so I think we get that all the time, and my international president, Charles, hey Charles, he he asked me, like why, like why do you, when you're around us, how do you feel, in terms of, a gay man, but also, um, in terms of like your influence and things like that, I am very conscious of how much I share and how I say things and what I do say, because I think you never want to be seen as like this person who's pushing this gay agenda, right? I think I think we're always viewed as some as if we're carrying around this rainbow-fied like book of just like plans, like, oh, on this day I'm going to talk about gay marriage in our Lambda, in our Lambda meeting, and like it's not like that at all. And so what I don't think that there is necessarily a rainbow bamboo ceiling for us, right? I don't, if that's a good analogy. But we always have to push the buttons. We always have to educate them, because it's important for us to continue to educate, because if they don't learn, then they won't ever open up to other possibilities. And so I remember, at our International Leadership Summit this past August, I openly said, like, yo, like, I know I'm gay. I talk about it all the time. Like, we talked about it in our training today. We used it as an example. But in no way am I pushing a gay agenda. I'm not trying to convert anyone. You can cross over if you want to, but like it's not a part of why I'm on the Lambda Phi, the Lambda Phi Epsilon International Board. And so I think that's something that we're always conscious of. So in regards to your question, I don't think that we're viewed as negative portrayals of our organizations, but definitely, there's always that like that feeling in the back, like, oh, am I doing too much? Am I saying too much? Am I reminding them too much about my gayness or my queerness? Um, and then one final question from Dr. Jones again. Are there discussions happening in NAPA organizations now around collaboration with NPHC or NALFO scholars or speakers to support moving this conversation forward? Dr. Jones, are you talking about yourself? Because you are a scholar. So I think that this is definitely the start. Anyone want to chime in?
Yeah, I can chime in for Napa. Thank you for that question, Dr. Jones. I think that's very important to think about how we partner and coalition build together. I think that from the first time we had this webinar, it was really progressive, and I think that a lot of the feedback that I got was that not all the councils or associations are doing this type of work or kind of talking about this, having discussions. So I think it's definitely a possibility. I know that in the future we are planning to have more interprofessional relations and partnerships with different councils, including NPHC and NAPFL. I personally do volunteer and help the different associations when I can. But yeah, that's definitely a conversation that we can have offline as well. I'm sure Hannah, who's the incoming chair, would love to talk to you about that. Thank you.
All right, do we have any last questions? We are a little over time, but get them in now, or you can, ask us on Facebook or email us. But we do have one last question, for the panel. If there's one piece of advice that our viewers can take away from this webinar, or just from NAPA organizations in general when it comes to LGBTQ experiences, what would that one piece of advice be?
I'll go first on this one. So, my advice is, just have an open heart and an open mind. Us being LGBTQ, it doesn't define us. If anything, it builds to our character and our personality. And just when you approach or think somebody is LGBTQ, just have an open mind and an open heart. And that would build on the relationship you have with them. And if they do become a brother or sister, it will just build upon their character.
I would say for everyone in general, just be true and be you. Um, and I think, I don't know, I guess, yeah, I agree with Rob. Honestly, it's just be open, and try not to assume. I mean, that's something I think I had to, I ended up teaching myself growing up, is just never assume anything. So whenever I meet anyone new, I never assume literally anything about them. Or if I'm not sure, I would just ask. Because to me, one of the more offensive things to do is just to assume something that's completely wrong. But, you know, it doesn't ever really hurt to ask sometimes. So that would be my advice, is just be true, and then never try not to assume, and approach things with a very open mind.
I guess I think that I'm going to be the cliche and say it gets better. You know, things like this happen. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, can you imagine what world we live in now, where you can be this person and you can attain such achievements in your life, but you have to work hard at it. I mean, everything is working hard. And if you are in this position where you feel like you're desperate or you can't do anything, there's always a way out, because it gets better, right? I mean, a few years ago, I never thought I would. I mean, a few years, maybe like a decade ago, because I'm old. But a few years ago, I never thought that I could have a family. I never thought that I could be a success. I never thought that I would live past, 25 and all the stress I was feeling. I was like, I'm gonna get a heart attack and just that's it. But here I am. I'm in my 30s and I'm happy. I'm living in New York City. I'm living a dream, and I'm engaged. And I don't know. It does get better. So just work hard and be yourself and try your best, because you're great and you're wonderful. I promise you.
I like how Tricia just had them casually right next to her computer.
Do those taste good, Tricia, by the way? Do they taste better than regular Doritos? I'm very curious.
I'm waiting to like have a group of people to share it with. I haven't opened it.
It's hard to follow that, Tricia, and I think that Mai definitely took my takeaway in terms of assumptions. I wanted to kind of bring that up too. So I guess in terms of another thing that I can talk about is speak up. I think that as an ally, as someone that identifies or not, be a good ally. Don't just be silent. I think that if you see something, say something. If you see something or hear something that someone says that is offensive, not just to the person it's directed towards or not, if it's offensive to you, say something. I think that having someone, a bystander, be there to say something actively on your behalf sometimes is a great thing, because it lets, like, say me, for example, know that you actually care and that you do want to be someone that is a good ally, right? So I think speak up. Don't be silent.
I think for me, if I were in that audience and I was trying to listen to someone, give advice right now, I would say, like, recognize that you're not alone, right? Like all of the others have said, it does get better. The fact that today we are having this webinar, that we have the technology to even have this webinar, right? And also to live openly, in the U.S., where same-sex marriage is legal, where they're rainbowifying Doritos, and also the fact that we have members who are living openly. I think that is symbolic enough for many of us to want to be ourselves. I know it takes a great immense of strength and courage and love for yourself and love for others to to cross that threshold of coming out, but also pursuing your dreams at the same time. And one of those dreams may be becoming a part of something bigger than yourself. But I think of it, being Greek kind of like being LGBTQ, because when you come out, you become a part of something bigger than yourself. I say, for loosely in our LGBTQ community, we call each other family, right? And it's not exactly the same thing, but we go up to other people and be like, hey, are you family? And like we know what they mean, right? Like, and so you're becoming a part of something bigger than yourself. And I like to think of it that way, that when you are making the choice to become Greek and that you are committing yourself to something bigger than yourself, know that it's for a greater purpose and that you're not alone, because once you join, that you are joining a community, a brotherhood, a sisterhood, an organization that supports you for who you are, and where I guess I'll leave it at that before I go on my soapbox and promote my gay agenda. So cool. So let's see if we have any other questions. Just a lot of comments from Dr. Jones saying how awesome we are. Yeah, and I think that's it. So if you all have any further questions, you can definitely, search us, on the NAPA website. You look for us on Facebook, on Twitter, our emails as well. This video will be published and posted on NAPA's Facebook page, and whatnot, hopefully within the next week. We'll see, because we do have full-time jobs outside of this as well. So yeah, so please look forward to that. I want to thank the panelists for being able to being flexible and being able to find time out of their busy lives to really model the way and be pioneers with us in this movement, as well as thanking all of you, the audience and our viewers, because without you, this wouldn't be possible either. So we are going to continue to work, NAPA and us, we're going to continue to work on more LGBTQ initiatives for the years to come, but this is just the beginning, so please stay tuned. And on behalf of NAPA and our panelists, have a great evening.
Everybody.